What's up everybody, Andy here and welcome back to Kit Guru. So, I've got a question for you. If you own the world's largest gaming desk, then what do you need for it? Well, one of the world's largest gaming mouse pads, that's what. Oh, and whilst you're at it, why not consider a new mouse to match it? Today, we're checking out Corsair's latest and greatest, the MM500 3XL mousepad, and also the brand new Dark Core RGB Pro mouse. The MM500 comes in at $39.95 and the Dark Core RGB Pro is $89.99. So let's start off with the MM500. Well, first things first, I could almost carpet my entire house with this thing. It's freaking huge. Coming in at 1,220 millimeters by 610 millimeters, or 48 inches by 24 inches. This is seriously no joke, and you should only be considering this if you have the space for it. So measure up, people, because you may be in for a surprise. Now, the premium pad is made from cloth and has anti-fray edges with a 3mm rubber base to avoid slipping. Now, Corsair have chosen a glide-enhanced woven fabric with low friction tracking for precision targeting. Now, this material feels amazing and it really is super smooth to the touch. I have a competitor's mousepad, and yes, okay, mine is a bit old and used, but the MM500 certainly wins in terms of feel, texture, and just general use. Now, the material is great and it makes mice movements very smooth, and I tested this out with multiple mice on it. Now, I do have to point one thing out though. Out of the box, it has a very pungent synthetic smell, and that was the first thing that I noticed. And over time, this did subside a bit, but I thought I'd mention it. Now, overall, I am a big fan of oversized mouse pads. I used to use the tiny classic mouse pads, and they always frustrated me. The benefit of having a large one is not having to worry about, the fact that you're going to fly off of it and then be on some random material or surface, especially if you play with low DPI and use huge arm movements whilst playing. Now, with the MM500, you certainly don't have to worry about that at all, since it almost takes up an entire room in your house. Now, for me, this size is far too large, as it doesn't even fit onto my desk, but if you have room for it, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I did have to test this out on an actual dedicated table because my desk space just really isn't big enough. Now, let's move over to the Dark Core RGB Pro. Now, my first impressions were it's also very large, it's really heavy and has tons of RGB zones, 9 to be precise. Now, design-wise, we have something a bit different here too. Firstly, the mouse has an all-black theme. It's got both left and right buttons that are separate from the main shell, and these are made from a very shiny plastic. Now, I'm not a massive fan of this because it's reflective and it almost looks a little bit greasy. But that could just be my opinion. Behind them, we have a large textured rubber palm grip, and I really like this. It feels great to touch, and the shape secures it into your hand. Now, the same texture can be found on the left side grip and thumb support rest, but it is plastic instead of rubber. And I know a lot of you prefer these plastic grips, but personally, I prefer rubber finishes. However, because that texture that they've chosen is actually really nice, it does provide a lot of grip. And for me, I actually can make an exception here and say that it's really good. Now, on the right-hand side, we have a smooth plastic shell that can luckily be swapped out with an included pinky support rest. This rest is a mini version of the thumb support found on the left-hand side and also has the same plastic textured grip. Now, for me, this is a winner, and I kept it on for 90% of my testing time. Now, underneath the mouse wheel, we have an LED indicator that tells you your connection status and battery life. Underneath that, we have a large profile switching button. On the left click, we have 2 more buttons pre-assigned to DPI up and down. And on the left side, we also have the classic forward and back buttons. Now, all of these can be remapped via iQ software, and I'm not usually the biggest fan of buttons on the left click because I find I accidentally press them. But because this mouse is actually pretty large, this wasn't an issue. The scroll wheel is super tactile with a similar textured design found throughout on this mouse, and it is satisfyingly clicky. So RGB, as mentioned earlier, there are 9 RGB zones, and I really like what they've done with them. Instead of these huge zones spanning the entire mouse, there are instead much smaller ones dotted around. Now these zones can be customized via the iCUE software, but the DPI profile LED indicators on the left-hand side can only be set to static RGB colors. Now I'm glad they've added dedicated zones for DPI settings, because often this gets overlooked and sometimes you forget what setting you're on. So I quite like this feature. On the base we have PTFE pads for days, especially if you have that pinky rest installed, as this provides an extra large pad as well. You can see the cutout here to be able to swap between side panels too. Now around the sensor we have the usual information overload, but towards the base we have a switch for selecting various connectivity modes. More on that later. Comfort wise, the Dark Core excels. With a sculptured contoured shape, it fits the hand perfectly, as well as having the customization of that right side panel. Now for me, all grip styles were actually really comfortable, and I have around medium sized hands. Now my wife on the other hand has really tiny hands, and she found it far too large, with her pinky not even reaching the support panel on the right hand side. So beware if you have very small hands, this definitely is not for you. So let's check out the connectivity. We have a few choices here. The first one being the included braided cable, which is USB-A to USB-C, and this can be connected via the USB-C port on the front of the mouse. Now this cable is also used to charge the Dark Core up for the next 2 modes. So next we have 2.4 GHz slipstream wireless, Corsair's wireless technology that connects via the included USB dongle. Now quick side note, at first I was sad to see there was no housing for this dongle on the mouse for transport and stuff like that, but there is. It's actually hidden underneath that removable side panel for super clean and easy access. Now the slipstream wireless boasts impressive wireless speed, and Corsair claim sub 1 millisecond point-to-point wireless latency, which is as fast as wired in their claims, whilst using intelligent frequency shift to stay on the fastest channel. Now I used to be a wired only kind of guy, but in recent years wireless tech has really come on leaps and bounds, and honestly I am converted. Wireless is now excellent for gaming in my experience, with no loss in performance. There is no noticeable difference at all, and using this mode still lets you access some of the insane claims that this mouse has to offer, and again more on that soon. Now finally we have Bluetooth, and this is also low latency at 7.5 milliseconds, but not as low as slipstream wireless. Now Corsair still aim this at gamers, but just don't do it. Use slipstream wireless instead. The only time I'd recommend Bluetooth is, for gaming when your wireless dongle's been left at home and you're trying to connect to a laptop whilst you're out and about. Now to me there is a noticeable difference, only slightly, but I've never really backed Bluetooth for gaming. Bluetooth for me is for office work, general browsing, especially as it does give some extra battery life. Now lastly, you can switch between all connectivity modes via the switch found on the base of the mouse. Very easy. Don't forget that the LED above the profile switch button will tell you about your battery life and status. For more information about the battery life, dimensions, and other specifications of the Dark Core, head over to kitguru.net. I will touch on a few specs here though. Corsair have chosen the PixArt PAW3392 for the Dark Core, but this is a custom version that's been specifically wireless optimized for better performance and battery life. As always, there's a bit of numbers game going on here with up to 18K DPI. Seriously, who uses that? A huge 450 IPS, but the standout feature here is something that Corsair dubs hyper polling. So what is this? Well, polling rate, as you probably know, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you, determines how often the mouse communicates its position and click rate with the PC. So higher is better. We usually see around 1000 Hz in gaming mice, but here we have the word hyper. So, it's got to be good, right? This has 2000 Hz polling rate. Yeah, that's 2000 data packets every second. That's double the current standard. Now, all looks great on paper, but I hate to say it and be that guy, and feel free to debate in the comments, but I didn't really notice my skills and kills double in performance. I did, however, find that the mouse is incredibly snappy and responsive. Gaming felt great. I never once thought that the mouse was holding me back or missing an input, and that absolutely must have been down to this feature. But I couldn't tell if it was a slight placebo effect or not. Now, I want to believe that double the data transfer has to count for something, right? But time will tell, and if other gaming mice switch over to 2000 Hz, then that might be saying something. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments. What I did also like is the fact that hyperpolling is available in wireless mode, but not via Bluetooth. Out of the box, it's set to 1000 Hz, and changing up to hyper mode requires iQOO software, but once it's set, it remains at that setting. Which leads us on to the software. So download the latest version of iQOO. The Dark Core has 3 onboard profiles that can be selected via the profile tab. These can be tweaked and saved, or you can start a custom profile here. Actions let you remap buttons and add macros to any assignable button. Lighten effects lets you choose from presets or assign any of the 8 zones to your own preference. DPI lets you adjust DPI indication, LED color, and more. Performance tab is for acceleration and angle snapping. Glad to see a surface calibration tab as well, but this does require a USB cable, and this is also true for the onboard profiles tab at the bottom. Hang on. Where do I set my hyper polling rate to obliterate the competition? Well, strangely, as I've seen with other Corsair mice, this isn't found in the same place. I'd like to have seen this under the performance tab or under a tab of its own. Instead, it's found under the device settings at the top. Now here you find power saving modes and RGB brightness too. Overall, iQOO is a great bit of software. It's got a clean design and it is intuitive, but I really would have liked to have seen a dedicated tab under the main section for the polling rate and other options. Now in conclusion, I absolutely loved the Dark Core RGB Pro. I love the design, that textured grip. It looks and feels premium. The RGB zone layout is actually really quite pleasing and it's not tacky. The small gloss accents tie into the theme. It feels great in the hand, and I'm a huge fan of that changeable side panel for the pinky rest. Having the choice between 3 connectivity modes will suit anybody's needs, and the performance really excels. Even the price point I think is accessible. It's high, but this is a premium product from Corsair, and you're getting a quality item, especially when some of the competitors are launching mice double the price of this one. However, I do have some negatives. It's insanely heavy for an FPS/MOBA targeted mouse. I'm fine with my Corsair Scimitar Elite weighing a ton for MMO use, but I do prefer lighter mice for FPS games. It's 100% not for small hands, and it is very large. And finally, that shiny plastic on the left and right buttons looks greasy to me, but hey, if you do have greasy hands, at least you won't notice. But that's my take on the Dark Core and the MM500. So if you've liked this video, smash the like button, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, check out our merchandise down below, and check out our website daily for tech news. I've been Andy, this is Kit Guru, and I'll see you in the next one, so thank you for watching.